Creek Week,
Hey everybody, welcome to the Creek Week.
a production of Allen Creek Community Church, where we exist to lead spiritual but not religious people to become fully devoted followers of Christ.
It's like
And to
said
do that,
before.
we are, what's that?
It's like you've said that before.
Yeah. So to do that, we're actually launching a series in, what's the next month?
June
It's
is the
June,
next-
that's right. And June,
on
we're
my
talking
calendar.
about character under construction. And so, is it character rebuild? It's character
It's
rebuild.
character rebuild,
I keep getting
because you titled it.
the
Welcome to your life.
Right, exactly. That was my title that I picked. So, interesting that we're going to be talking about character. In a world that maybe is focused, you were talking about this morning, we were talking about the world is focused on getting the right public policies so that the world doesn't go crashing into a ditch someplace, either on the left or the right. And you were saying to me, Dan, I wonder if we're putting our resources in the wrong spot because maybe we have to first get our house in order. And we're talking about that this month, about getting our internal character house in order.
Yeah, like some of the debate that happens in the church and elsewhere, I mean, it's not just the church, seems sometimes to be like, okay, now that the horses are out of the barn, let's start running around, and figure out how to chase horses rather than, wait a minute, how do we keep the horses in the barn in the first place where they belong?
You gave
For
the analogy of a sick patient as well.
Yeah, like
You're an analogy man today.
It was. It's my
Like
job.
every day.
Every day.
But it was like the patient that's sick with cancer.
Yeah, I mean, it's like here we have somebody that's running a fever and we're giving him hypothermia because we're dunking him in ice all the time. It's like, we got to control this fever. It's like, well, excuse me, this person has cancer.
Yeah.
We should probably address that.
So it's like character is the great deficit when we're just running around trying to fix every other problem. It's like we are at a massive character crisis.
I think it's a contributing factor indeed.
Well, so interesting that you say that because a great example of this, I have in my hot little hand here, Dan.
Printed out on paper
Printed out
like
on
a
paper,
caveman.
like a Neanderthal. A recent article from Christianity Today entitled "A Tale of Two New York City Pastors." So this is connecting to the recent, in the Christian world, a very kind of significant passing of Pastor Timothy Keller. So what a lot of people don't know is this guy wrote a bunch of books, very helpful in the church, but he was a pastor of a church in New York City, a really kind of conservative
very conservative
church in New
Episcopal.
York City, but had a massive footprint there, reaching very sort of secular, a very secular Manhattan-based audience. And he finishes his race with just incredibly high character. And then there's another New York pastor, and maybe equally famous, but for exactly the opposite reason, Carl Lentz, who was the Hillsong pastor who kind of like resigned in disgrace just last year. So two New York guys, two pastors, both very doctrinally not very similar in that conservative evangelical, one Reform, one Assembly of God or charismatic, but still both kind of down the middle of the same street.
Yeah, they're in the big tent. They're Christians.
Yeah. But one kind of completely different in terms of just the character issues. Carl Lentz, was sort of famously known for, kind of really trying to accommodate the secular milieu by being as cool as possible. It seems like, that was the persona he was trying to affect. Whereas Keller, I mean, look at him. He's bald. He's got a tweed jacket. He's 72. He seems like he's always been old. He actually he moved to New York, planted a church at 50, so 5 years younger than me.
Yeah.
And so the exact opposite. What's the legacy? What's the lesson we're getting out of this?
Well, I think, again, we're talking about two people who fit inside the big tent. These are brothers, not having met them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they're both terribly awful people.
Yeah, right.
I don't. Based on what I know, they're brothers. They fit doctrinally inside the same tent that we do and that most people who identify as Trinitarian Christians.
Yeah.
There's differences in style and some minor secondary, I would say, doctrinal differences. But their legacies have to do with their character, have to do with how they view things like humility, things like patience, things like truth-telling, self-control. And these are the things that people finally remember. I was reading something else recently about Billy Graham. And, you could say a lot of things about Billy Graham, but one thing you can't say, you just can't seem to dig up a lot of dirt on the guy because he had high integrity. And you can say the same thing. I mean, I think we should say this, make this clear. This seems to operate at about equal parts across that faith line. You can find secular folks who are of high moral integrity and character, and those of low. And we tend to remember them for those things, not so much for their doctrinal
Do you remember when people were making the argument that character didn't matter for leadership?
I recall the first time I heard it.
What was that? And
the Clinton administration.
Okay, and so, do you think that sort of time has proved the fallacy of that? Like that? Wait a minute. If I can't trust you to, for example, in that case, and there are others like the celebrated Watergate case, if we want to just be equal in our, partisan issue, that if I can't trust you to have high fidelity to your wife, there's going to be a problem. I might find a real issue with the way you lead in your other policy pursuits.
Well, I think this is the interesting difference to go ahead and straddle that partisan divide. The difference in 1974 with Richard Nixon and Watergate was that nobody was going to argue that his behaviors that he was caught doing were low character, and that low character precluded him from office.
Right.
That wasn't an argument.
Right.
And
this is
and
good.
his partisan folks had to kind of tuck their tails between their, not all of them did, but they had to kind of tuck their tail between their legs and say, our guy goofed up, he shouldn't be president. And 20 years later, in the 90s, here we have a president who had a moral failure. Granted, a different thing. I don't know that he committed a crime. But nonetheless, now the debate wasn't, well, that doesn't disqualify him. It's like, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
It's what he does. His character doesn't relate directly to this. And that's not a blue-red thing.
Right.
That's not the point. The point is the culture changed.
Yeah, exactly. What changed wasn't human nature. Human nature stayed the exact same.
Absolutely.
That we can.
It's not like those two dudes were doing anything that Julius Caesar wasn't doing.
Exactly. Human nature didn't change. Politics didn't change.
No.
But what changed was our attitude about character. Well, it really needs to be different in the church, especially when. The apostle just calls us to be imitators of Christ, right? You follow me as I follow Christ. So the idea of having integrity, which is a math word, right, Dan? It speaks to integers are whole numbers. And so to be a whole person means you're the same person on the outside as you are on the inside. You're the same person in private as you are in public. And it's kind of like who you are when nobody's looking.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that means warts and all. Right?
Yes, it's true. Like
so
there's no perfection of character, absolutely.
Yeah, and that what that really means is that's going to bring in humility.
Yes.
It's like, because, I want to be the same in public as I am in private. Well, in private, guess what? I can be petty, and I can be driven by fear or ego or whatever. All right, well, I need to let that then moderate what I'm going to do as a leader in public and realize I've got flaws, and I don't get to get out there and get out at the end of the branch,
right?
Where the weight of my failure is going to snap that thing off.
Right.
So it's not about being perfect; it's about being honest and being honest with ourselves. I think so. A series like this coming up in June is absolutely critical, not for us just as individual disciples. Like we want to be transformed into the likeness of Christ.
Yeah.
That's what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. I want to look more like him at the end of a day than I did at the beginning. But this has to do with us as a kingdom, as a church. If we have high character people functioning inside the church, then the church itself becomes a safer place for everyone. It becomes more effective. It becomes more fun. All the good things you want come from a high character person. And then that has an impact on our world, which is rapidly decaying. Because of lack of character. So we can really be light and salt. Because of our character.
It becomes kind of a stark sort of standout subculture. as we pursue the character of Christ. So, AC3, I hope you join us for this series. Super relevant for the times that we're living in. And like Dan says, transformative for our community and for our community that's around us in Marysville. So, we'll see you this month as we do a character rebuild. Let's look under the hood and see what we got to
Look under
see
the hood.
there. Like,
Let's get under the hood, see what's cooking.
yeah.
This is how it's going to go. It's like I give it the hood, and I'm going to go, well, it's not the wing nut on the air cleaner. Call somebody now.
That's about all I've got.
That's all I got. Anything.
It's basically a black box as I
It's just-
rebuild this.
Here's
thing
your
that
problem.
I'm
The big switch is in the off position.
doing. That's it.
The hat blew off the snowman.